There's something special about revisiting the past, whether it's through nostalgia or through experiencing something you missed the first time. My first Dragon Quest was Sentinels of the Starry Skies, and to this day, it's my favorite in the series. It's the only one I've ever gone back and fully completed again, and I think that says a lot. So when Dragon Quest III HD2D Remake was announced, I knew I had to play it. Not because I had some deep connection to the original, honestly, I didn't, but because it was Dragon Quest. And sometimes that's all the reason I need. But what I didn't expect was how much this game was going to remind me of being a kid again, watching my dad play JRPGs when he still did. Dragon Quest III gave me so many of those childlike wonder moments, the ones that make you stop and appreciate just how much fun a game can be. And that's what I love about remakes like this. I'll always try to play the originals when I can, but if a remake makes a game easier to access, I'll jump in without hesitation. And honestly, I'm glad I jumped into this one. Welcome to Backlog Worthy. Let's talk about Dragon Quest III HD2D Remake. Turn-based combat is my bread and butter, and Dragon Quest has always been my go-to for it. The combat in Dragon Quest III HD2D sticks to the series' roots, which I appreciated, but there were a few things that kept it from feeling as fresh as I'd hoped. The automatic combat for party members was a nice touch, until I actually had to strategize for bosses or grind my way through hundreds of metal slimes and liquid metal slimes just for a single level up. I really enjoyed the class system, but by the late game, I ended up cheesing it by making my entire party go through the Monster Wrangler class. It was fun, but it also made things feel a little too easy. What held it back the most, though, was the lack of visual feedback in battles. I wish I could actually see my characters attack rather than just watching the effects play out. It reminded me of early RPG Maker games, where your party members are just invisible damage dealers. I'll be honest. Part of what drew me into the world of Dragon Quest III was the graphics. I am a sucker for pixel art games, and I feel like I say that every time I review one, but it's true. That said, the game is more than just a pretty face. With only Dragon Quest 7, 8, 9, and 11 under my belt, I wasn't sure how 3 was gonna compare. But something about it really stood out. Maybe it was the HD 2D aesthetic, or maybe it was the way the world felt alive. But whatever it was, it worked. The story kept me engaged enough to push through, to spend as much time in this world as I could before the inevitable happened. I 100%ed it, and I had to move on to another game. And that took me 77 hours. So I can't complain too much. The new art style made me appreciate everything even more. I found myself stopping just to watch the ocean shimmer in the light. It's one of those games where I feel like the visuals will stick with me, though that might be because this is my first real experience with a 2.5D graphics. Silent protagonists aren't really my thing. I get why they exist. They let you step into the character's shoes, but I always feel like they take away from the story rather than add to it. In Dragon Quest III, we don't really get to know what the hero is thinking, and on top of that, the rest of the party barely speaks outside of one cutscene I remember getting while trying to 100% the game. Strangely enough, I found myself more drawn to the bosses, especially the main antagonist, because they actually had a voice. Their presence added weight to the story in a way that the main cast never really could. The graphics and music in Dragon Quest III HD2D are, simply put, stunning. The 2.5D presentation is brilliantly showcased throughout the game, from the smallest details like the ocean shimmering, to the way the battles play out even against the most basic of enemies, like slimes. The art direction here is honestly a thing of beauty. As for the music, I have to admit, this is where my Dragon Quest bias kicks in. This series is one of my all-time favorites, and hearing the classic tracks again just felt right. There's something comforting about loading up a Dragon Quest game and being greeted by the familiar Overture. It's like the game is welcoming you back, letting you know exactly what kind of adventure you're in for. What kept this from being a perfect 10 for me was the lack of a real connection with the main characters. So much of the emotional weight in Dragon Quest III comes from the world and the side characters rather than your own party. I also kind of wish there was a bit more variety in combat, but I understand why they stuck to the original design. Honestly, after playing through the game and writing about it, this game gets an 8 out of 10 for me. Would I recommend this game? Absolutely. Dragon Quest III is a great starting point for newcomers, being the first game in the Zenithian Trilogy. And as a long-time Dragon Quest fan, I had a fantastic time with it. Now, I'm just here sitting and waiting for the next games in the trilogy to get the same treatment.